Good evening and welcome to the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Carlin,
Here.
Evans, Garner,
Here.
Herzog,
Here.
Olmsted,
Here.
Peschel, Selji,
Here.
roll call is done.
Thank you. And it sounds like we have a quorum this evening.
Yes, we do.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would invite you all to stand while Dr. Cartwright leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. Our next item of business is board and administrative reports, starting with the board president report. I don't have a lot to share at this time. I did attend the recent meeting of the Oshkosh Public Museum Board. The board president, along with the board superintendent, are ex officio members of that particular group. Some good news there is that the museum is opening on July 21st, so that would be next week. And they had planned a tremendous exhibit for later this year on the Titanic. And it would focus on those individuals who had Wisconsin connections. Because of the worldwide pandemic, that exhibit will be postponed until 2021. However, there are many good things to see in the museum, and there are two areas of the museum that focus on Native cultures, Native American cultures. And so if you're looking for a cultural experience, I would recommend checking those out. On a sad note, I would like to announce that the district has lost a staff member. Brandon Shepard has been part of the Oshkosh Area School District Community Learning Center site coordinator at Jefferson Elementary School. He passed away unexpectedly on July 7th as the result of a swimming accident. The funeral will be on this coming Saturday at 10 a.m. at St. Raphael Church, preceded by visitation from 8 until 10 a.m. So I would invite you all to stand again in a moment of silence in memory of Brandon and in tribute to his family. Thank you. And on behalf of the board, I want to extend our deepest sympathies to his family and his colleagues in the school district, along with his friends. Moving on, then we move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Cartwright.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herzog. Just one moment while we cue that up. So for the project search, we recently expanded our partnership with Goodwill to ensure students have a place to continue their learning amid COVID-19 restrictions in place at Ascension Mercy Medical. Specifically, Goodwill will be providing classroom space for the program so that district's continuing education interns are able to take part in the valuable and hands-on learning experience. We are grateful for the continued commitment and support of Ascension Mercy Medical, Goodwill, and the many organizations continuing to support Project Search. Related to Project Life, the district recently partnered with the Oshkosh 20th Avenue YMCA to expand our Project Life program, which focuses on supporting high school juniors and seniors that are in need of a more life skills-based curriculum. As a community site, The YMCA's partnership will allow us to serve and meet the needs of more students. A friendly reminder for all of our families. The annual enrollment deadline is August 31st. Annual enrollment for returning students is required, and only by fully completing the process will a student's place at school be assured. For those that need help completing the process or access to technology, we are pleased to be able to offer individual appointments. More information is available on the Oshkosh Area School District website and was previously sent via email to families that still need to register. To date, 75% of our current Oshkosh Area School District families have completed the required annual enrollment process, and individual appointments are ongoing. The average take for existing Oshkosh Area School District families, it's about 5 minutes in order to complete that process. So if you're one of those families that hasn't had the opportunity to go there, we strongly encourage you to go ahead and get that done as soon as possible. We are pleased to announce the expansion of our E-Academy online program, now available to kindergarten through grade 12 students on a full-time basis or a part-time blended basis for high school students. Our E-Academy is a high-quality, free, and local online program that offers a variety of virtual learning options and services for students. Expanding the online learning program was a strategic priority for the district and was included in our community-driven strategic plan. However, the launch of the kindergarten through 12th grade opportunity now comes at a time when interest and need may be elevated due to concerns related to the COVID-19. More information is available on our website, and we invite interested families to learn more and to enroll today for the 2020 and 2021 school year. On the screen, you will see just a few examples of what has been consuming my time lately. As you can see, a lot of meetings, a lot of planning meetings that are happening. We're very grateful, to be frank with you. Right now, we do have a lot of subcommittees that are meeting and working on our plans related to opening school back up in September. Very pleased to report to the board. With those committees, we've been very purposeful to ensure that every staff role is represented on every one of those committees. So the committee that's dealing with transportation, the committee that's dealing with instruction, the committee that's dealing with facilities themselves, and there's several other types of committees that are out there, but they all have all of our different roles within the organization. So not only do we have administrators, but we have our custodians, we have our clerical staff, we have our instructional staff, we have our paraprofessional staff, because it's very important for us to hear the voices of our staff members. Not only that, but they also bring a very important insight because of their roles, and it's going to have a different insight that each of us would have or would not necessarily have. So this is a very important time and opportunity. We're going to be sending out communication to our staff later this week, just talking about what are we working towards for the beginning of school. And it's a little flexible still because quite frankly, we are going to be sending out a survey to our parents next week. And we're going to be asking them a variety of different pieces of information that's going to help guide us when we're finalizing the plans that are currently being developed right now. And so parents, please look for an email next week for a survey that's going to be coming to you, asking for your feedback and your input and helping us design what school will look like in September. So please pay attention to that. Board, at this point in time, I do have a request of you. I actually had two requests of you. And I'm going to take just a moment to kind of go over that and make sure and see if you would be able to accommodate the first request. My first request that I have for you is for August the 5th. It's the first Wednesday in August, requesting that we have a special board meeting. And the purpose of that special board meeting is to hold a workshop to review what those plans are going to look like for reopening school in September. So we want to workshop it with the board so that you're aware of what's going on, get your feedback on this as well. and then proceed from there with formal resolution on the next board meeting on August 12th. But not only that, but it also will be able to announce these plans out to our community and with our parents. Gives them about a month thereabouts in order to make whatever arrangements that they need to make in order to prepare for school. If I may, real quick, maybe if you wouldn't mind, just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Would you be available on August 5th? So Ms. Carlin, I say yes. Ms. Olmsted, I say yes. Mr. Peschel, yes. Ms. Gardner, yes. Mr. Evans, yes. Ms. Shalaji, yes. And Dr. Herzog, yes. Okay. Thank you so much. We will get that scheduled and we'll get that noticed for everybody, so we're aware of that. The second request I have from you is our first board meeting, August the 12th, our designated board meeting of the month. I'm making a formal request that we resume in-person meetings starting on August the 12th. And doing that, we will do that in the Tipler gym. That way we can have the appropriate social distancing. Making a formal request of all board members, please wear face masks, as well as any of our visitors who would be coming to, maybe as a public speaker or anything to that effect. Face masks again will be required. And so at this point in time, are there any concerns related to that request?
I have to have that conversation with my family before I make that decision publicly.
Understood, Mr. Peschel. And we will continue also to make available to anyone that has a need through the Zoom meeting as well. And we'll make that the way we have right now, specifically with how our public is able to watch our meetings. OCAP will make arrangements for them to be there to be able to push it out the way that we're doing right now as well. Okay. All right. Without further ado, Dr. Herzog, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have any district administrator supplemental reports that would necessitate sharing out today?
The main report that is out there is our annual requirement. The annual requirement is related to our charter schools. So the two reports that you have in your packet is going to be related to the ALPS as well as to the Shapiro STEM Academy. As you might notate within those reports, they are slightly modified from what you would typically see on a yearly basis, given that we were not able to complete our spring assessments in the manner for which we normally do. Given the COVID situation and our at-home learning environment, that would be the most significant difference from what you have experienced in the past related to those reports.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. Are there any board committee chair reports tonight? Okay, seeing none. The next agenda item would be non-agenda related public forum. Although we've been meeting virtually since the second meeting in March, we've always provided for an opportunity for the public to weigh in by sending us comments that would be read aloud by 5 o'clock the night of the meeting. I understand there were no such requests tonight, so we can skip on to the next agenda item, which is the agenda related public forum. Once again, there were no requests to have anything read into the minutes. So our next agenda item is the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. We have requests at this time to pull resolutions 4B and 4C. Are there any other requests to pull anything from items 1 through 8? Okay, seeing none. The board will consider approval of 1, minutes of June 24th, 2020 regular board meeting. 2, minutes of June 24th, 2020 executive session of regular board meeting. Number 3, bills payable. Number 4, personnel, appointments. 4A, appointments, resignations, and salaries. 5, Fox Valley Technical College Riverside Campus contract for 2020 to 2021. Number 6, student academic standards requirement and assessment update. Number 7, high school co-curricular handbook update. Number 8, purchase of property located at 1251 Kentucky Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
So moved by Evans.
Second by Garner.
Please call the roll.
Sorry, Harlan,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
Herzog,
Aye.
Olmsted,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Moving on then to Resolution 4B, retirements. Be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the retirements as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved by Evans.
Second, Olmsted.
Thank you. I was the one who requested that this be pulled. Once again, we have 3 longtime staff members who are choosing to enter a new stage of life. And we thank them for their many, many efforts to improve the learning and the growth of our students. Julie Ackerman is retiring as a cross-categorical teacher assistant from Carl Traeger Middle School. She has been employed with the district since 1996. Cheryl, or as I've known her, Sherry Lautenschlager, has been a cross-categorical teacher assistant at Roosevelt Elementary and is retiring after 25 years with the district because she joined the district in 1995. And finally, Cynthia Wolf, 1.0 media assistant from South Park Middle School, has been with the district for roughly 23 years, having come here in 1997. We wish them all well. May they enjoy a long, healthy, may each of them enjoy a long, healthy, and happy retirement. Any other comments, questions? Please call the roll on 4B.
Harlan,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
Herzog,
Aye.
Olmsted,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on then to Resolution 4C. Be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the administrative appointment and salary schedule, as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved, Olmsted.
Second, Garner.
Dr. Cartwright wanted to address this one as we have a new administrator joining our ranks for the fall semester.
So pending final approval from the board tonight, it will be my pleasure to present to you Corey Bulio. Corey is currently the dean at Oshkosh West High School, did an excellent job during his interview, definitely has a strong instructional background, also is able to really relate with students in a very meaningful and caring way. And so in addition to that, obviously, as a current dean, also understands behavior and understands how to appropriately work with students related to behaviors that they may exhibit at school. So without further ado, again, it is my honor, my privilege to make the recommendation for Corey Bulio to be promoted from a dean to assistant principal at Oshkosh West High School.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Mr. Peschel, are you raising your hand? Or I'm trying to pick up on cues here. Sorry about that. Would you please call the roll?
Carlin,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
Herzog,
Aye.
Olmsted,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We now move on to individually considered resolutions, number 9. And this has 3 parts. Resolution 9A, resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limit for 9 years for non-recurring purposes. 9B, initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $107 million. 9C, resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of a resolution authorizing the school district to exceed revenue limit for 9 years for non-recurring purposes, and an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $107 million.
Moved by Evans.
Second, Olmsted.
Thank you. And we will move on then to Dr. Cartwright. This is obviously a topic we've spent a great deal of time with over the last 9 months. And before we vote, I know that Dr. Cartwright had some important items to share with us. So Dr. Cartwright.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dr. Herzog. Meanwhile, I know staff is going to bring up just high points because we want to ensure, again, as we are moving along with this, we continue to be transparent. We continue to ensure that our community is aware of the actions of the board and the recommendations of administration to the board. What we have done, so that you are aware, are a couple very important things. Is one, as we took the PowerPoint presentation that was presented at the last board meeting and in the form of a workshop, and we have consolidated this down into the essential components related to both of the referendum questions. One thing I do want to highlight right away, because I think it is important to notate that it is a difference between what was stated originally during the workshop versus what you have in front of you tonight. And this is related to the actual capital referendum question. There is a slight revision in the language. And so we wanted to ensure that we're highlighting that. I know when they get to the presentation here in just a few moments, they're also going to highlight that for you again, but just to start us off so that everyone is aware of what's the difference in this presentation compared to the workshop that we had previously provided. And so we're just going to say what that difference is on the front end, and then so that people can follow along with us. So the question or the statement, the revision to the language is originally in the capital question. There was a piece in there that said the construction of a new middle school on district-owned land adjacent to the existing Merrill K-8 school. And it did say previously, and removal of or demolition of that current building. However, we have adjusted that language. So again, I want to highlight that because it is different than what we have stated before. So we now are stating this is a part of the operational question, not the entire. So the part that has been changed is, instead of saying that we are going to remove, it says the potential removal of the current building. So this is referring to the Merrill K-8 building. That way it gives the board a little bit of flexibility in the future. Not today, but as we go forward in the future and have future discussions, then if this referendum gets passed and approved for tonight to go on to onto the ballot, and then if our voters approve of this referendum going forward, then it allows a little bit of flexibility on behalf of the board. So that's one change that we wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of. The second thing is, during our presentation at the last board meeting, we told you that there would be a phased in approach related to the tax impact. And so what we have done between the last board meeting and tonight's board meeting is we have fine-tuned what that tax impact is going to be. Again, we feel as though that's very important because that was a part of the why now question that was out there, and a concern that was expressed stating that it's going to have a large impact, right? You know, it's going to have the $85 per $100,000 valuation of home impact right away. And what we explained at the last board meeting was, no, it would be a phased in approach. So with that, what we are talking about is, again, they will review this again as we get into the presentation. But for the 2021 school year, the mill rate increase would be 48 cents. So that translates to $48 per $100,000 valuation of a home or property value, or $4 a month. For the following year, for 2022, it would be a mill increase of 70 cents or $70 per $100,000 valuation, which equates to $5.84 per month. And then it's on the third year, starting in 2023 through the remainder of the bond amount. That is when the full 85 cents mill rate, or $85 per $100,000 valuation, would take full effect, which would be $7.09 per month. So we just, again, on the front end, wanted to tell you what the two revisions were, because those are the two significant revisions besides the paring down of the presentation. And with that, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to staff, Dr. Gunlock.
Good evening, everybody. As Dr. Cartwright alluded to, this is the third time we've actually come before you, and I realize most of this is repeat for board members, but we felt it was really important, as community members are becoming more keyed in on this, to provide the information just one more time. There's two types of school referenda, and we've talked about this before: operational and capital. The operational referenda that we're referring to, those were referenda that were passed in 2014 and 2016, and those allowed us to continue existing programs and also provide for personal technology for students, which we've used quite a bit recently. Capital referenda projects are for things that are usually referred to as brick and mortar and new construction. The last time we went to capital referendum was for the construction of Oaklawn Elementary School. So we're really looking at two different types of referenda here. The first one is probably in some ways the easiest, is the operational referenda, because in 2014 we passed our first referendum for learning that was in the amount of $3.95 million a year for a 7-year window, and then it was always scheduled to go away. And there was another referendum stacked on top of that in 2016 for $4 million. And after 7 years, that would go away. And as people who were around at the time, the reason for those referenda was largely due to the fact that the state of Wisconsin was not providing districts with any type of inflationary increase after an unprecedented decrease in funding. Districts like Oshkosh that spent significantly below the state average for years were sort of caught in a pickle, and they did not have the flexibility, because as board members, you don't have the flexibility to raise the revenue above the revenue limits imposed by the state. So that requires us to go to the community and ask them for their support. And we were successful in both of those situations. And when we presented that back in 2014, people did ask at that time, why not go for a permanent one? We felt it was important to do what the community had asked, and they had asked for a sunsetting of that so that they could take a look at what we did with those resources. So the composition of the 2014 referendum was largely existing programming that students were taking advantage of every year. That was 2.5 of the 3.95 million. The 1.45 million is what established our Learning Without Limits initiative, and I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. But simply put, we could not have continued any form of instruction at all since March without those resources. So we are so fortunate that the community was supportive of that, and that we were able to put that technology in place, because we've used it quite a bit pre-COVID as well as post-COVID. One moment. Just had to admit a couple people to the meeting. The 2016 referendum for learning was a little bit different. In the first year of the $4 million, we had $600,000 that was carved out to initiate the installation of some of our district security cameras. If you'll remember, at that time, we were one of the very few districts in the state that did not have security cameras in our schools. And this allowed us to put in that technology, and that's been very valuable to us for a lot of reasons in terms of safety and security. Years 2 through 7, that 600,000 was one-time money. It was allocated. We added some resources from the existing budget, and we installed the cameras throughout our schools. After that, from year 2 on, 100% of those resources, all of the $4 million, are used to continue to fund existing programming that students take advantage of every day. The Learning Without Limits initiative, we just take a moment to pause a little bit on that one, because that's a pretty complex initiative, and it's been very valuable to us, but it required us to do a few things. Number one, in the first phase, we had to put in a state-of-the-art infrastructure. For those who were around at that time, Oshkosh did not have an infrastructure. The technology system was in a state of disrepair, and we needed to repair that and make sure that the technology was as reliable as the light switch. And we were able to do that, and we are very proud of our infrastructure. We would put it up against any school district in the state. Phase 2 was providing teacher support through embedded professional development. Those are our technology coaches. And that was really a key part of having our technology system be usable with students. Phase 3 was we provided staff with technology in addition to the support with the tech coaches, and also modern classroom software and services. Phase 4 is when we started to roll it out with the kids. And that actually started with high school students. Then we moved down, we phased it in, moved down into middle school and elementary school. And we've gone through this a couple of times now, and we're very good at it. So some of the Referendum for Learning benefits outside of the technology piece is, number one, ensuring student opportunity. Number 2, providing quality staff. And number 3, providing a robust academic infrastructure and support. Where did these 3 things come from? Well, in the last workshop, I showed the fact that we had the cut list from 2016 that was created by a community advisory committee. When you look at that list, what we have used the resources for every year could be categorized as one of these 3 things. So you take all of those things that we did not cut, and this is where they go. Providing students with opportunities like kids in other districts just take for granted. Providing quality staff. We had a record amount of turnover previously. By providing quality staff and putting things in, we're able to ensure that that does not happen. Providing robust academic infrastructure and supports to make sure all the systems work properly and efficiently. That's also part of this. The interesting thing is this also aligns very closely with our 3rd version of our strategic plan, goals 1, 3, and 4. And while they touch almost all aspects of the strategic plan, it very much goes towards those core 3 goals. What people really need to realize is those 3 goals were not created in a vacuum. Those 3 goals that I'm pointing out right there were taken from the Oshkosh community, because every time we go through a strategic planning process, the first thing we do is we turn to our community and ask them, what do you want of your schools? What do you want us to deliver for you? And then what we do is we package that into a strategic plan. So we're happy to say there's a tremendous amount of alignment here, and it works really well for us. So the recommendation, in order to continue to prepare our students for future opportunities and challenges, is for the board to ask voters to renew the 2 existing referenda for learning on November 3rd, 2020. It's important to point out that this represents no tax increase, because it's just simply continuing what we're doing. If it's not renewed, the district would obviously need to make the corresponding budget cuts in 21-22 and then again in 23-24, totaling just under $8 million. Here's the ballot question that actually addresses that. We understand that sometimes these ballot questions are a little wordy. We wish they weren't, but they're written to legally match what the district then is going to be required to do. I guess in summary, what this ballot question does is it takes 2 operational referenda and wraps them into 1. That was also something the community told us loud and clear, is they don't want to keep coming to referendum every so many years. In other words, merge these things together so that we don't have to keep doing that. This does that. And once again, it's really important to point out, this has no tax impact, because we continue to provide the same opportunities we did the past 7 years for the next 9 years to our students. So then we come to the capital referendum. There's 4 components, and this is sort of the end of the story. And we'll talk a little bit about how we got here in a moment. But this is the end of the culminating work of a lot of people in the community. And it's brought us to a capital referendum project that has 4 component parts. The first part is safety and security that represents renovations to 7 of our schools throughout the Oshkosh Area School District, additions and renovations to 3 additional schools in the district. The total amount for that is $8,990,000. And we'll break that out for you in a moment. The next piece is a new elementary school. That would be a new elementary school built on the current Webster site that would house students from obviously the Webster area, but also the Washington area. And that cost is $35,480,000. The third component part is a new middle school. And that would represent $53,200,000 and be built adjacent to the existing Merrill site. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. The last but not least is infrastructure components. These are pieces that are critical to our infrastructure that we could not do with the existing budget, with the existing maintenance budget. One of the things that we're very proud of is being able to stretch our maintenance dollars as far as we can go. Jim Fox and his team have done a wonderful job doing that, but there's some of these infrastructure items that frankly are too big to be handled by that budget, and they would need to be funded to the tune of $9.33 million. So as I said before, this is the end of the story. The beginning of the story is on this slide. This represents a lot of work over a lot of years. I joined the district in 2010, and I know facilities was one of the major concerns of the district at that time. And how do we actually get a handle on what to do with this facility work? Well, in 2017, we had a facility study conducted on just what would it take to fix our existing facilities. And what we found out was it costs us a lot of money to fix some facilities that in some cases are over 100 years old. We also did an enrollment projection study because we felt it was really important for us to have all the data at our fingertips in terms of capital improvements and a cost analysis. In 2019, as I referenced before, we did a strategic planning process. And in November 2019, we did a full-blown community survey. All of this information was provided to a very hardworking, often meeting facility advisory committee that was a representative group of taxpayers from Oshkosh who sat down and looked at all the facility issues, all the needs, and they had to come up with what are we going to do about it and send that recommendation to the board. So in February 2020, the school board unanimously approved the 4-phase long-range facility master plan that was provided by that facility advisory committee. The capital referendum represents phase 1 of that. That is the start. In March 2020, the school board unanimously selected Bray Architects, and Matt Wolfert and Clint Selly from Bray are with us here tonight to work on us with the phase 1 work. And that's where most of this information came from. In June 2020, we conducted several board workshops on facility needs and the funding options associated with it. And then it brings us to tonight, where it's July 15th. The board is going to have to make some decisions in terms of which direction that we're going to go that's going to set the stage for the future. So facilities context. We all know that we're the sort of the state champs when it comes to old facilities. We're the most gifted district on using our facilities as long as possible. Most districts around us don't do nearly that well with that. 3/4 of our schools were built before 1970, and several are more than 50 years old. Average age of the schools is about 66 years. The oldest building or a section of it was built in 1880. And there's only 2 schools that were actually built in the 21st century. So it really does put that into context. The last time, as I mentioned, we did a capital funding request was for the construction of Oak Lawn Elementary School in 2012. And prior to that, 13 years earlier, Jefferson Elementary School. As I said before, Oshkosh schools are typically older than our neighboring districts, and we're proud of that. We're proud that we have clean, well put together schools that we've been able to use as long as possible, but we're kind of coming to that point where putting more money into some of these buildings is probably not the most effective option. This is a list of some of the district-wide safety and security improvements that go into the safety and security portion of the referendum. You'll notice that there's a lot of gray lines in this. Those gray lines go to some of the safety and security dollars that we would not be putting in because these facilities are either slated to go away and be replaced or to be repurposed. The white lines are the lines that are going to be adding some additional security functions. And this totals at the bottom, and you may not be able to see it, but we'll break it down later, $8.99 million. Just a little side note, if you look at Webster, it's 363,000, and Merrill, it's 75,000, just in safety and security improvements that we would not have to make by replacing those buildings.
And Dave, this is Clint, kind of just jumping in on that point. And we've talked about this previously, but even, the improvements we were going to make at those two facilities from safety security were a bit makeshift just due to some of the level challenges and existing configuration challenges of those buildings, the locations of the office, the ability to add on without kind of adversely affecting the site. So again, it's kind of specific to Webster and Merrill. There was actually some significant challenges just trying to accommodate safety security within those facilities.
The other thing, and I think it will come up again a little bit later in the presentation, is sometimes people wanted to know, why did we start with the Merrill site? In the original facility study that I mentioned that happened in 2017, to fix the Merrill site, just to fix it, would cost over $12 million. So that really elevated Merrill as one of the first sites that the Facility Advisory Committee looked at and said, really, if we're going to start somewhere in Oshkosh, and there's a lot of places we could start, that's a really good spot to begin. So the 4-phase long-range facility master plan, as I mentioned, we're sort of in phase 1 of that. And that would mean building a new middle school on the Merrill site with capacity for North Side Middle School students. That's at a capacity of between 850 and 900 students. That's larger than middle schools in Oshkosh, but that's very typical for middle schools in Wisconsin. It would also provide for a new elementary school on the existing Webster site to accommodate some of Merrill's, all the Webster students and the Washington Elementary School students. The remaining Merrill, Webster, and Washington students would be sent to E. Cook, Reed, and Oaklawn via boundary changes. And we'd close the Merrill and Webster schools as they exist now due to the new building construction. The future of Washington Elementary, that is still to be determined, and we've been having conversations with the city, and we're looking forward to conversations with the various neighborhood associations and getting their input on all of that as well. The new elementary school design objectives. Number 1 was enhancing building safety. Safety is always our number 1 concern. We also wanted to align the physical spaces with the philosophies of teaching some of our youngest learners. Putting structures in that support smaller learning communities was really important to us. We felt that grade level cohorts in close proximity to each other were really necessary. Collaborative spaces for students, staff, and community members. The key here is flexibility. Our current facilities have very little in the way of flexibility because they were designed so long ago. And flexible spaces is really going to be the hallmark of facilities design, not only now, but well into the future. Strategic placement of media center and office, that was really at the heart of what we were setting up. Providing playground equipment, you've heard me talk about this. This is something the PTOs really like, this concept of if you're putting in a new school, also put in a new playground for kids. And improved access to critical staff. By making these 3 to 4 track schools, it allows us to more cost effectively provide school psychologists, social workers, school resource officers, behavior interventionists, you name it, all the support folks and specialists it's far easier for us to put them in front of students than it is currently today, spreading them amongst so many small schools. This is the conceptual site plan. Clint, I don't know if you want to talk about this or the following slide in terms of what was the overall thoughts in the design.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. You were doing well, but I'm happy to take over. Good evening, everyone. Again, we've kind of looked at the site plan. As we look at this, again, one of the things we wanted to point out was earlier in the process, and then again this week we did meet with the city to again kind of preliminarily look at this. Again, understanding there's a long road to approval and a process that we'll have to follow to the project. But again, looking forward to a good partnership with the city on the planning for this overall project. Again, one of the main goals as we look at the site is really the organization of circulation on the site. On the west side of the site off of Grove Street, there's a large bank of parking for staff, for parents and visitors, as well as a parent drop-off zone that will be located on that side of the building. On the north side on Melvin Avenue is actually a pre-existing drop-off zone that we will continue to utilize as part of the project. Again, that would be a parent drop-off zone, so really two different areas to drop off. And then for the bus drop-off, the plan right now would be to use the Seaward Trail access point that on the south side of the site where there is some additional parking. That would be staff-only parking, and then the buses would be located there. In terms of kind of the front of the building, we have just an amazing site here with the proximity to the park across the street on Hazel, and then the proximity to the lake. So the east side of the building is really going to be kind of the marquee front of the building, with the administration kind of anchoring that in the center, and then some parking and drop-off area outside of that. Additionally, then again, we have to make sure we are accommodating playground and outdoor play areas for the students, so that kind of occurs in the central part of the site, as it were. Moving to the floor plan, one of the key parts of this, and Dave described it in the goals, was really trying to create schools within a school, and this applies both to the elementary and the middle school. So each of the grade levels, beginning with kindergarten and then moving all the way up through 5th grade, really occupy their own wing within the building. And the theory is they're really the only ones that will be within that wing. They have a sense of community, a sense of place. Their lockers, their resource or kind of collaboration area, their own bathrooms, their access to special ed and those types of things will all function and be available within each of their pods. And then the north and south circulation kind of forms a main street then through the building, where the students will have access to all the special classes such as art, music, and access to the cafeteria and gymnasium.
So the new middle school design objectives are very, very similar, but there's also some unique differences. Once again, the middle school would be built with modern safety and security features. The focus here is to create smaller learning communities. One of the concerns we heard loud and clear was, this is going to be our largest middle school. What are you going to do to make the larger middle school feel smaller? We'd have 150 students per grade level teams. Grade levels would be designated on specific floors. So this would very much, even though it would be our largest middle school, it would feel like a very small middle school. It would promote 21st century learning, creating flexible educational spaces. Once again, flexibility is key. Small group instruction for specialized learning, access to full-time specialists dedicated to the students and staff. Once again, administration and pupil service is centrally located. Space for collaboration, for meetings, for preparation, and a whole bunch of things we haven't even thought of yet. That's one of the key pieces of having flexible facilities. Anybody who's worked in recently designed facilities knows you can morph those facilities into different things as the needs progress. Community-oriented design with playground equipment, meeting spaces, a large gymnasium, and a cafetorium. Currently, it's set up very similar to what we have at Traeger Middle School. So I guess I'd turn it over to Clint a little bit, and you can talk a little bit once again about the site.
Sure. So the site as it's shown in front of you on the left-hand side is overall site. So the current Merrill building occupies the lower right-hand corner where we're showing some soccer fields or what will eventually be athletic or play fields in that area. And then the proposal would be to construct a new middle school in the district-owned property in the upper left-hand corner, kind of along Jackson, Nevada, and Kentucky Street in that area. We would then locate the parking kind of in a central location so it could both support the school and the public portions of the school, specifically the gym and cafeteria, while also supporting the play fields shown in the current site. Again, in terms of the change in the language for the referendum, again, the intent there was to allow some flexibility for that existing site should some opportunity for reuse of the facility or some other adaptive feature that the district does have some flexibility in how that site is eventually developed. Again, specifically looking at the school site proper is kind of the right-hand side there where it's a little bit bigger. Jackson Street, we really want to keep a sort of a light touch, so to speak, on that. We don't want any vehicular traffic. We really don't want students interacting. It's very likely that there will be some type of a fence along there to, again, keep kids safe from a very busy street. So really our only touch point to Jackson would be access to the receiving and kind of back of house portions of the building. Nevada would be the bus drop-off zone for the facility, again, trying to separate buses from parent drop-off. And then Kentucky Street would be the location for the parent drop-off along the street there. Again, some considerations for play areas on that school site. And again, we're looking for a 3-story building to be constructed here. So looking specifically at the floor plans on the next slide. So again, 3 stories going left to right. The first floor, you can see the start of the classroom pods. So in this case, 6th grade is on the first floor, 7th grade's on the second floor, and 8th grade would be located on the 3rd floor. And in the kind of starting in the upper left-hand corner then of the first floor, 6th grade is then split into 2 separate pods. Again, that idea of a school within a school or a smaller community within the much larger building. So again, those students would be housed within their community with access to, again, some of the additional features they need, some teaming space, their lockers or cubbies, access to science, and access to some special ed spaces. And then as described at the elementary, there's kind of a main street concept in this floor plan as well. The main corridor kind of running north to south connects all of the specials then of the building. On the first floor, there's art and STEM spaces in the upper right-hand corner. Our administration spaces then are housed in the central part, again, really well accessible to the students. Then the cafeteria, gymnasium, and our band, orchestra, and choir spaces then along the lower part of the plan. On the first floor, one of the things we want to try to do with many buildings is to separate kind of the academic, which kind of the private functions of the building from the more public functions. So for after school and weekend events, the cafeteria and gym can kind of function separately from the rest of the school. Again, 7th grade then being on the second floor. Family and consumer ed was something that is very specific to that 7th grade program. So we tried to locate that on that floor so that would be accessible to those students. And then again, 8th grade with the 2 pods on the 3rd floor, staff space and special ed space corresponding to their various programs.
So that kind of gives, in a nutshell, the two of the portion of the capital project, the new elementary school and the new middle school. Last piece, but certainly not least, is the district-wide infrastructure upgrades. And here you can see the breakout of where those resources would go. HVAC, Carl Traeger boilers and piping would be $950,000. Electrical service upgrades would be just over $4 million for West and North. Fire alarm upgrades at North High, South Park, Webster, Shapiro, and Roosevelt would be about $2 million. And then generator replacement at South Park, Tipler, Oakwood, and Shapiro would be about $220,000. The roofing at West High, Franklin, and Carl Traeger would be about $2 million for a total of $9.33 million. So here is the phase 1 budget summary. You can see safety, security, the 2 new schools, and the district-wide infrastructure, and that's how we get to the exact amount of $107 million. This is really an important slide because it shows the anticipated design and construction schedule. And one of the things that we've been saying that as we've talked about this with different groups is remember, this is something that's going to take, it's going to be constructed over a period of 4 years. It's going to be financed over a period of 20 years, and it's going to be utilized over a period of 100 years. So this is a very long range type of situation. And we realize that things are very uncertain. We're living in a very uncertain time right now. But if we delay some of these decisions, it's going to push this entire schedule off. And that would also cause problems down the road. As you can see here in the whole setup, the first thing that we're going to be doing is working on the less intensive projects while we are designing the middle school. I mean, in a nutshell, then we would construct the new middle school adjacent to where the existing Merrill is. We would move all the middle school students into their new home, which would come from Webster as well as Merrill. And then what we would do is use the existing Merrill site for a year while we are demolishing and reconstructing the new Webster Elementary School, and then we would move them back. And the new Webster Elementary School would be slated to open in 2024. So that's where we come saying 4 years to construct, 20 years to finance, 100 years to use. Sort of a summary here in terms of facility summary, we're really trying to reduce the number of schools. This would take Merrill, this one change would take Merrill Middle, Webster Middle, Merrill Elementary, Webster Elementary, and Washington, 5 discrete schools, and take them down to 2. So in one shot, we would go quite a good ways towards some of the consolidation goals approved previously by the board. It would also support school safety and security in sites throughout Oshkosh and address infrastructure and maintenance needs in all of our sites throughout Oshkosh, or most of the sites. Obviously, a school like Oak Lawn, which was recently built, does not require any resources because it was recently built. The outcomes are allowing the district to provide appropriate level of academic support. It helps us place students with adults in a more cost-effective and appropriate way. It allows the district not only to keep pace, but exceed surrounding districts. We would leapfrog surrounding districts that have been making improvements all the way along. And it would allow Oshkosh to become a destination community for people to live, play, and work, which is one of the objectives. This is the second ballot question. Once again, it's a little wordy, but it basically allows us to purchase general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $107 million for the projects I recently described. The important part is at the bottom. As you saw when we did the construction schedule, not all the work is occurring in the first year. So this will be a phased in annual tax impact, and you can see the tax impact down below. In 2021, the mill rate increase would be 48 cents, which would be about $4 a month or $48 a year on a $100,000 home. In year 2, that would change to 70 cents, which would be about $70 or $5.84 a month on a $100,000 home. And then it would plateau out at 85-cent mill rate change, which is $85, and that represents about $7.09 per month. So that is the phased in annual tax impact. We liked to see that because we realized during the most uncertain time until the COVID-19 pandemic is firmly in the rearview mirror, the changes are smaller and then they eventually plateau out at the 85-cent mill rate. So one of the other questions that we've heard is why now? Well, doing the operational referendum in November, funding is going to expire in June 2021. So we would need to make $7.95 million in cuts over the next 3 years if we didn't go now. There's no tax increase. It simply renews the existing funding previously approved by voters and previously used well by the school district ever since 2014. It'll continue the current academic programs and support services uninterrupted. It advances the community developed strategic plan, which came from the citizens of Oshkosh. They said, this is what we want in our school district, and this delivers upon that promise. It does combine the previous 2 referendums, as I mentioned before, which was also a concern people brought up, and it sort of compresses it down into one single referendum that would sunset in 2030. The next question is why now in terms of the capital referendum in November? Well, it advances the work of the Facility Advisory Committee that was approved by the school board. We have historically low interest rates and an extremely competitive bid market. If you are going to build a school, this is probably the best time to build a school. Construction inflation is running at about 4% per year, so the longer we wait, the more expensive this gets. We also see this as an equity issue. East Side schools, which would be the first set to be improved, are among the oldest and serving our most diverse population. We feel that starting there not only makes good fiscal sense, but it also would be a great thing for those neighborhoods. The facility improvements take time to implement. Longer we wait, the longer it will be until we have modern, safe, and consolidated, as well as efficient schools. The other thing is, the option to do nothing is not an option. We're going to be spending money on these schools. Over $12 million would need to be spent at Merrill alone just to fix it. And in the end, you'd still be sitting with a 100-year-old facility. You would have put that kind of money into a 100-year-old school. So we see this as a situation where you have a cost benefit versus a cost and reduced benefit. So that was a concern as well. We feel the community is keenly aware of the value of education and the need for modern schools. And we need to continue to move forward so that Oshkosh becomes the destination community for people to live, work, and play. Other communities are not standing still, and we should not be standing still either. The last one is why now for both referendums? Well, choosing not to pursue a November referendum would signal to the community that the needs we've talked about are not critically important and can be put on hold. That is something that we feel is not necessarily the case. Also, doing both in one ballot would reduce voter fatigue when it comes to referendum. That's something we've heard people loud and clear on. And lastly, what we're really excited about is during a presidential election, we will have the maximum number of voters out. And that means the maximum number of people will get a voice in the future of their schools. So in summary, after all that information, really we have 2 basic things: an operational referendum question that continues the 2 previously approved referenda, maintains academic programs and services, including our state-of-the-art technology infrastructure and services that our students are leveraging every day, and no tax increase. That's question 1. Question 2 is the capital referendum, which funds phase 1 of our 4-phase long-range facilities master plan that was developed by the community and unanimously approved by you as a school board. This phase would be completed in 4 years and financed over 20 years and used for over 100 years. The phased-in annual impact, as we said, was $48 per 100,000 in 21, 70 in 22, 85 in 2023, and that's on a $100,000 home. So that's a lot of information in a nutshell. Each time we get it compressed even further, we're going to have to get this down into an elevator pitch at some point because that's part of what we do. But at this point, I would open it up for questions and any conversation the board wishes to have. I think I left you all speechless. But your eyes are all open, so that's a good thing.
Dave, while the rest of the board members are thinking, let me just ask a clarifying question, if I may.
Sure.
With the 2017 Bray study, did that focus primarily on things like roofs and tuck pointing and foundations rather than improving instructional learning spaces?
I'll let Clint take that one. I do know what tuck pointing is now, which is kind of interesting, but Clint can say it much better than I can.
Thank you.
Correct, Dr. Herzog. That was really just the condition of the facilities. So the items that you mentioned, tuck pointing, some condition of flooring, some condition of just the general kind of building makeup. We also looked at the electrical systems, the plumbing systems. Again, the district has done quite a bit of work on the HVAC. So where we would see a comparable district to you, your costs in some of those avenues, you've done a great amount of work keeping a lot of the HVAC systems up throughout the facilities. But yeah, it did not look to improve capacity or update capacity. It did not look to improve the academic abilities of the buildings to, allow collaboration and allow flexibility. It was mainly just the kind of the state of the buildings and conditions of the buildings as they stood.
Thank you, Clint. Someone else have a question or a comment? Mrs. Carlin.
I have really been struggling with this decision for a while because, as you all know, I am such a supporter of new schools, and it's probably the number one reason I wanted to be on the board is because I wanted us to get new schools. And the reason I've been struggling is because, we are in unprecedented waters, to put it mildly. And I really wonder if this is a good time. We say that timing is everything. And we have a lot of unanswered questions at the moment. For example, what is school going to look like when we open in the fall? Are we going to do more virtual online learning? I'm struggling. I am. And so my two questions are, when is tonight the very last night that we have to vote so it can be on the ballot? And what is the worst case scenario if we go to referendum and it does not pass?
Well, I think, no, this is not the last moment. You could, there's a certain day requirement that would allow us to actually pass a question in August and still go in November.
Okay.
The reason we brought it and we accelerated things just a little bit in through the end of May, through June, through today, was because we have a very limited window to communicate to the taxpayers what this is about. And in a presidential election that promises to be a little bit loud, we're probably going to get drowned out at a certain point. So we really perceive that the number one thing we want to do is provide accurate information to everybody in Oshkosh so they know what this is about and why this is occurring and everything that we've talked about. We feel we have, and we're going to need every minute of it in August and September and October to be able to communicate that. So that's why we recommend, we really need, if you're going to make a decision, make it now so that we're able to go. The next question was, what happens if it does not pass? Well, if it does not pass, we're not able to do it. What it does is, from a facility standpoint, these facilities are not going to get any younger, and we went through the situation with Smith. Some decisions are going to be made for you, and I don't know that I can predict any of that, as to when that would occur. But the facility study outlined quite a fair amount of resources that would have to be allocated and put into facilities as they exist today.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, you just raised another concern I have, and that's, getting a referendum passed is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And I cannot even imagine the work you guys are doing right now to get our schools open and put in safety precautions and figuring out the million-piece puzzle of what school is going to look like in the fall. And I'm sure that's keeping you all busy. So do you guys have the time to really get out there and sell this too?
I'll probably let Dr. Cartwright start with that answer.
And I also want to address another segment of your previous question as well, Ms. Carlin. So related to time, I would say we are very, very fortunate within the Oshkosh Area School District. If you recall, when I started the meeting, I spoke about how we have a lot of subcommittees that are going on right now. And we are incorporating a variety of personnel across the entire district. I think that's very important to notate because I'll be frank with you, I don't have the answers to everything. Dr. Gunlock doesn't have the answers to everything. Dr. Jones doesn't have the answer to everything. It is truly an all hands on deck approach in order to take a look at that. But Ms. Carlin, school's going to start September 1st. And so that by going forward now, to answer your question, do we have the capacity, because that's your question, is do we have the capacity in order to work on both of these things at the same time? My answer to you is yes. And because there are areas of responsibility amongst the team that have different types of areas of responsibility, and it taxes upon each person differently in order for us to distribute that workload appropriately. So that was a very good question. The second question, I want to go backwards just a little bit, is you were saying, you know, this is an unknown time. We don't know what's going to happen. And I want to respect that. I want to acknowledge that, yes, we know that right now, you know, what this upcoming school year is going to look like throughout the school year. It's going to be a very fluid situation, and we're very appreciative of that, and we completely understand that as well. However, we also know that at some point in time here, and hopefully sooner rather than later, we're going to be returning back to hopefully a sense of normalcy of what we were. Now, it's never going to be exactly like what we were, but to getting close to that. And to being able to, again, the difference again on this one is maybe providing more options for students as to how they receive their education. But we know that we're going to need facilities in which to educate students. We know we're going to need those brick and mortar facilities. Even if this were to pass in November, okay, let's say the board authorizes it, it passes in November, we're still not opening that new middle school until 2022. That's how long it takes in order to put everything in front of it, to do the appropriate planning in order to incorporate the right stakeholders to the table, to get into the weeds of what the school's going to look like, and then to get into actual construction and to build it. And then the doors open in August 2022. So that's 2 years away. So again, the desire by 2022, let's really hope, I really, really hope, and I do believe COVID's going to be in the rearview window at that point in time. So I hope that gives a little bit of clarification too.
Yeah, so that raised my last question, and then I'll let some of my other board members speak. But construction costs, if we go into a recession, et cetera, supplies are limited, materials are limited, will construction skyrocket? Will this building cost more than we're budgeting for? I have no idea.
Certainly. I'm actually going to ask Drew to talk about a little bit as far as what the debt would be as far as our interest rates are concerned on that right now. And then I'll ask for Clint to talk a little bit more about the construction costs. So Drew, please.
Good evening, everyone. I guess right now, part of the ideal time as far as the financing goes with the bonding, we're looking at crazy historic levels right now, like to unheard of, and they're not going to stay this low forever, obviously. They're only going to start going back up. What we're looking at for the refinancing package that we're going to be bringing to the board is a sub 1% rate. right now what we have figured in our assumptions, and we didn't change assumptions when we had this phased in. That's a really, I want to be real clear on. We didn't change any of our very conservative assumptions. So we're still assuming over a 3% interest rate on the initial bonds and going up above a 4% on the second and third offerings. So we're looking at very conservative numbers right now with a very conservative impact on our mill rate. And that's only going to go up no matter what happens. Our interest rates have been way too low for an extended period of time for most economists. At some point, they're going to have to start going up and inflation's going to hit. We need to already have acted by that time, because once inflation hits, it's going to hit hard, and you're looking at potentially millions of dollars worth of additional interest, not to mention what your construction could be in 3-4 years. Because again, this is we're going to take these bonds out in 3 different offerings over a 1.5 to 2 year period. So no one can predict in 2 years what that interest rate's going to be. But if we're not locking in the first 40 to 80 million soon, we have the potential to lose a significant chunk of money due to the additional interest from what we potentially have currently. I'll let Clint speak to the construction costs and any of that, because that's his area of expertise.
Hey, Drew, this is Matt from Bray. I'm going to jump in here. Stephanie, great to see you. I remember the Oaklawn project well, and I think that was your first foray into exactly these conversations. So
yeah, you guys did a great job too. Thank you.
Oaklawn's a great example of the benefit of timing. And it's usually just lucky. It's not really anything you could intentionally plan for. If you remember correctly, Oaklawn bid at a pretty optimal time. Take interest rates out of it, just pure construction costs. We saw phenomenal value for the dollar at Oaklawn. You think of the high level of finishes, the terrazzo floors, the low maintenance, all the great things, the geothermal, all the things you see at Oaklawn were some intentional, others in a way, just the fact that the community, and at that time the board, proposed a referendum and worked really hard, as you know better than anybody, to gain community support for that project. And by chance, we were in a tough time then. And you benefited as a community by getting a phenomenal building for well under the targeted budget at that time. And so that's not the reason to go. I'm not suggesting that's the reason to go, but it's a little interesting that we're kind of in the same place right now. And I don't envy you as a board making the decision, not an easy one, given everything that we're facing and you're facing. But the last time around, the community got it. They saw the need. They, I think, acknowledged the importance of the solution and the investment on the north side of the community. Mm-hmm. And they've benefited, and the district has benefited for quite a few years now with a great facility that was delivered under budget. Just based on timing and the community support. So,
and that neighborhood has flourished. Absolutely.
I know that the board has raised questions over the summer relative to the economic situation we are in, and I don't think any one of us takes that lightly. We know we have people who are hoping to go back to work, whose jobs may not be there. I believe that the state, as well as the city, is planning for a turnaround in terms of an improvement of the economic conditions and lowering the unemployment rate and getting more people back to work. The fact that this is a phase-in relative to the impact on the mill rate, I find attractive, because I think it does take into account the economic situation that we are in, while also maximizing the dollars that would be requested, showing that we are indeed good stewards of the financial situation of the district. We know that over time, the district has put money into energy efficiencies in many of our buildings to reduce costs. We've changed insurance carriers, not an easy task and not a fun one, so to speak. to save money. Drew Nehan spoke tonight about refinancing our debt to save money. I believe the district has shown that we have been and continue to be good stewards. I remember stories about this district going back to the 1980s, where certain elementary schools with flat roofs could not close their doors during the winter holiday break or the spring break without putting large sheets of plastic sheeting in classrooms to gather the water that they knew would come into classrooms. And finally, the district decided they had to borrow money and had to fix multiple roofs at great expense because they had been allowed to deteriorate for so long. Back in the 80s, the district made a number of decisions. I wasn't here then for all of those, so it wasn't on me. But they made a number of decisions about balancing their budget by reducing maintenance costs. They postponed many, many things. There were, when I joined the district in 1987, there were many times when the board learned about improvements that were made to schools on boilers and various things that were so old, the manufacturers were either out of business or they were no longer supplying the parts. And this was well before the days of 3D printers. And our custodial staff, to their ingenuity and dedication to our buildings, often had to fabricate these pieces or parts to preserve boilers that often got to be 40, 50 years old, far beyond, for example, what a heating system in our homes would last. So I know it's not an easy decision, but I think that the longer we wait, the longer we put off giving the voters of the community an opportunity to vote on this, it's going to cost them and us more in the long run. Noting that the capital improvements that we're looking at would include infrastructure updates to approximately 11 of our schools. That's a lot of schools that continue to need upgrades, and those needs aren't going to go away. So I think in light of the fact that we have the support of a survey, we have the support of the Oshkosh for Education, the Facilities Advisory Committee, which represented a cross-section and a diverse population weighing in on this, that we do need to make a decision tonight. That would be my recommendation as your board president.
And I agree with you, Barb, that we have tremendous community support for this, or we did, but I don't think we've done a polling post-COVID to see if there's still an appetite for it. Aside from talking to the Oshkosh for Education group, the optics I'm hearing on this, and I would love some of our other board members to chime in and see what they're hearing. But when I discuss this possibility with some members of the community, they absolutely think I'm crazy because it is not a good time economically for them. They've lost their job. They can't afford more taxes. And I don't know. I would love to hear from other board members on this topic. What are you hearing?
Well, I think as a board member, as board members, our job is we're actually looking into the future. We have to look into the future. That's what we're here for. And when it gets to be now, I don't think that's our concern anymore because we are planning out the path that we want the district to go on. And this plan fits in with the vision I have for the district. I think it's going to be good for the district. It's going to be good for the city. I know there are people out there that, again, say why now, but we can't be concerned with just what is happening now. We have to plan out what's going to happen in the future. And which is why a decision like this is hard because you got to base the decision on something you don't know what's going to happen, but it's your job to plan for the future and to put the district on better ground. And I think this is the way to go.
Anyone else? We've had some silence here. Allison Garner.
So from what I understand from Dave's presentation, we're going to end up having to come up with 8 million if we don't do this for the operational side. So that is going to happen. We do know the future on that one. So if we do not do this, we know exactly what our future is going to be. And that's lots of spreadsheets where we pour through and we decide what programs we're going to cut. So if any of you have been on the board during that time, that's not a lot of fun. And I have no desire to do that again. The second thing that I think is really important is we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on our buildings. We know that for sure. They require a lot of maintenance, and we've deferred some of that. And things are going to keep coming up because they continue to age. So COVID has nothing to do with any of this. So if we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, do we want to pour that money into buildings that are falling apart and dilapidated, which they're not? I'm being dramatic. Or do we want to then use that same amount of money to create something new? So I don't see this as being anything dependent on what's going on right now in our world. And I actually do think we know a lot about our future right now. Thanks, Barb.
Thank you, Mrs. Garner. Is there anyone who has not spoken on this issue who would like to weigh in? Mr. Peschel.
Sure. So I know that the motion that's on the floor is for the kind of all-in-one option that's and such, but when board member Garner indicated, we know that we're going to be 7-9 in the hole in a year or so. It leads me back to that if there is enough question about what part do we want to move forward with, that we're comfortable moving forward with, it might be that conversation about whether we want to split the referendum questions up. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not suggesting a change in what we're doing right now. It's just that could be an answer to Ms. Carlin's questions there, because I think we might be more comfortable maintaining our operations at this point than we are saying absolutely yes to $107 capital referendum. That's one question there. That's one comment there. I have a question in regards to the capital improvement side of things in regards to the plans. How flexible are the architectural plans once let's say we go to November referendum, we pass that, do we still have flexibility in regards to how the buildings are laid out, where athletic fields are, that type of stuff?
This is Clint with Bray. The plans right now are extremely preliminary. If you'll notice, that schedule has about a year-long design process. So we will look at various other options. We will, the configurations of the buildings will almost undoubtedly change as we develop the plans. And I think the main thing, though, is the goal that's listed in the referenda needs to be adhered to. So we are building a new elementary school. We are building a new middle school. We would not be able to, I'll just say that as an extreme example, we wouldn't be able to scrap those and suddenly build a new high school or, something like that. We need to follow what's prescribed within the referendum. but in terms of like, we don't have, just because we showed sort of 2 soccer fields, it doesn't mean we have to build 2 soccer fields. If it was a softball field and a soccer field, or the configuration, the exact, layout of a lot of those things is still to be determined in great detail.
Sure. I'll be honest with you, Clint, I'm looking to see an auditorium in that future playground area. So that's what's going to win it for me.
Yeah, I guess on that note, the plan right now is that we would treat the middle school similar to Traeger, with kind of the cafetorium
Sure.
type, flexible multi-purpose space. So that's the approach to that right now.
Sure. Thank you for that. And I think in general, my general concerns are is I'll be honest with you, I hear the same uncertainty in our community as well. But I also agree with the context of Mr. Evans in saying that our job is to create and maintain that path for the future. And so I kind of go both ways on this. I'm hearing trepidation. We have to acknowledge that our community has concerns of doing that right now. I think it's important to acknowledge that. But we're also in a spot where we have to be leaders and sometimes make those very tough, challenging decisions that may or may not turn out to be in the short term, be the most positive, but maybe in the long term turn out to be the most positive. So those are just my general comments.
I know we've heard from several members of the community about the possibility of an auditorium as part of that middle school development. I would also like to see that, Mr. Peschel. Obviously, our largest auditorium in the community is on the west side and is well used, the Alberta Kimball. But I'm hopeful that we could find the means to add an auditorium for the north side, because I do know that the Webster Auditorium has been well used, and it was recently, well, everything's relative, but recently updated within the last 10 years at Webster Middle. Anyone else who's not spoken? Mrs. Olmsted.
Thank you, Dr. Herzog. I understand, and I'm listening to all my board members, and I too have repetitions about going to referendum for both of them. I do worry about that. My largest concern is if we go for all of it, all or none, having to make cuts if the operations does not pass, having to make those cuts. So that's not an option. Like, we have to go for the operations referendum. That, to me, I stand that is not an option. We have to go for that. And if we put that all together, the two referendums that are sunsetting, we put those together, we go for those. That's not an option. We have to do that because we have to have that money, and that's not going to affect the taxpayer. And that's money that we need to operate the schools. Regardless if we do at-home learning, online learning, virtual learning, in person, it doesn't matter. We need that operational money. I do understand the concerns for the future for making the capital referendum. So I would prefer them obviously to be separate questions on the ballot, so that, because I am hearing a lot of both sides of that. So that is something that I think I'm more comfortable with. But I am comfortable going after both of them this fall. I do. That's up to the community. They know what we need. We've communicated this for well over a year. We've been discussing this. We've had our committees on it. We've as a board, we've talked about it. So going ahead and doing it in November, if it passes, great. If it doesn't, then we step forward from there and we move forward. But I really believe as school board members, it is our job to do the best for our students, and the best for our students is to get this referendum going. It is the best for our students to have newer schools. It's the best for our students to have better learning environments. And I understand with COVID, I really do understand the impact. We've all been impacted by this, but pushing this off another year or two, then we do. We let the taxpayers tell us whether or not. I mean, they voted me into this position. I'm asking them to look at this referendum and tell us what we want to do. So regardless or not, if we put it on, the only fear I would have would be referendum fatigue. If we do go something like this and it doesn't, and we try to keep coming back. That's my only fear out of all of this. And I am excited that it's a presidential election, because we will get a lot of voters out there. So then we are really getting our whole community telling us what they want from us. I see Drew has his hands up. Drew, did you have a comment about something I was saying?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify for you. There will be physically 2 questions on the ballot. So the resolution gets combined. If the board chooses to act on both resolutions,
Yep.
It's a combined resolution, but there will truly be 2 questions on the ballot. So the community will vote separately on the operational and then on the capital if the board chooses to go to question on both, so everyone's clear.
Yep. Andrew, I knew that. And I was saying that so that the people at home watching do know that there's 2 questions and that I agree with the 2 questions. So I really appreciate you clarifying that for them. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Bob, did you want to add something, Mr. Peschel?
So mine was just clarified.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
And I was just going to note that 9A is a resolution for the non-recurring purposes for the Learning Without Limits. 9B is the capital referendum, and 9C then pulls those 2 together into a date specific, which would be November 3rd, 2020, which is the date of the general election, even though that's the longest of the resolutions in terms of space. Drew?
Yep.
I just want to clarify for the board as well on the resolutions. If the board does choose just to act and proceed on an operational, then we're not going to act on any of the resolutions in number 9. We'll skip to number 10 and act on 10A and 10B. And that would be all the board would have to truly act on within the resolution. Same if all the board wanted to act on was the capital question, they would skip to 11 and A and B on the agenda. So just to be clear, so everyone's on the same page of what sets of resolutions we want to act on, so we don't get confused and approve something or deny something we don't really need to.
Right.
That would be bad.
I
Yes.
appreciate that. Anyone else has not weighed in? Mrs. Salaji?
I just wanted to finish up quick, Dr. Herzog.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Olmsted.
That's okay. So thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. I guess when we read them, I think I know in my head because I read them and I've looked at it since last Friday, and so I have them. And then last night we got some. So I am in agreement that we have to move forward. I like that we have 2 questions, and I just say that we're not going to have a turnout like this for a while. And this will really, really, really give us what our community wants us to do. We're not at fault for asking. We asked, they will tell us what they want. That's kind of where, and what they can afford to do. They'll tell us, yes, we can afford it, or no, we can't right now, on the both questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Olmsted, and I apologize for cutting you off. Mrs. Salaji, did you want to weigh in? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I want to make sure you have an opportunity to give voice here.
Yes, no, thank you for making sure I get a chance. I really appreciate what Mr. Evans said about the focus on the future. And I agree with Ms. Olmsted. I feel that this needs to happen now. At least I gather what she was saying. As a board, we already voted to adopt this 4-phase approach. And this is us going to the community and saying now that we'd like them to support the first phase. I definitely understand, though, Ms. Carlin, why you are struggling. I have empathy for people who think this timing isn't great, because it's really not. but we didn't know when we adopted this 4-phase plan, or when we started with Bray Architects years ago, we didn't know that that's what this timing would be right now. But I'm excited about it. When I see the layout of that middle school, I taught in several different buildings, and when I left education, I left a building that was designed just like that middle school. And one of the takeaways I took was that there is a gold standard for school building designs, and that is it. That is exactly the kind of school I taught in. It was 3 floors, 6th grade on the bottom, 7th in the middle, 8th at the top. There were pods, just exactly like that. And I truly believe that facilities, this is my teacher experience speaking here, the facilities impacts learning. And when I see that layout to that middle school, it makes me so excited. So even though right now it's unfortunate that this is going forward during COVID, I feel a need to keep going forward because I, like Ms. Carlin, one of the main reasons I wanted to be on the school board was for the facilities, and that facility right there is just really exciting to me. So I'm ready to move forward. I appreciated listening to everyone, and I understand the hesitation, and I appreciate this dialogue, but I personally am ready to move forward with 9, A, B, and C.
Thank you for your voice, Mrs. Salaji. Mrs. Carlin.
I just want to say thank you to my board members, because as usual, you've brought up some really good points that I hadn't thought of. And especially, the taxpayers can decide when we take this to the ballot. And I keep thinking about Nina, and they weren't successful the first time, and then they went back bigger. And so, we'll just have to hope that our taxpayers understand that this is the plan and we did approve it. And this is the kind of plan I've been asking for forever. So thank you to my board members, because I think I agree. I think you made me change my mind.
Thank you for weighing in, Mrs. Carlin. Is there anyone else who wishes to weigh in? We do have a motion and a second. And if there is no one else who wishes to weigh in, I believe we can call the roll on the question for resolution 9, A, B, and C as part of the revenue limit, capital and borrowing questions. All right, let's please call the roll.
Carlin,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
Herzog,
Aye.
Olmsted,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Salaji.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I want to thank all the board members for weighing in tonight, and for everyone who has gotten us to this point, not only the Facilities Advisory Committee, but Dr. Cartwright and her team, and the administrative team for all these presentations that we've had over the last couple of months, as well as those folks who weighed in on the survey, those who participated in the Facilities Advisory Committee, and Oshkosh for Education. Now it's in the lap of the administration to move forward, along with plans for opening up school for the upcoming school year in a safe manner. All right, with that, we'll move on to requests for future agenda items. Does anyone have an agenda item they'd like to propose for an upcoming meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. Does anyone have an announcement they would like to make this evening?
I have one. It's not specifically school related, but it's kind of fun. For Art Space Collective, the August show, we are doing a group show on Zoom meetings. And since we've been meeting Zoom since mid-March, it's going to be a drive-by or a walk-by. It's going to be in our front window, so you don't even have to get out of the car, but it's going to be on Zoom meetings, which we are still, I think, trying to get the hold of on how to work this thing. So.
And what's the date on that, Mr. Evans?
It opens
Is that
August 1st.
Very good. Thank you. Any other announcements? Well, then just a reminder that we agreed this evening, we would have a special board meeting on Wednesday, August 5th. The primary purpose of that meeting is to talk about the district plans for reopening school in the fall and what that may look like, what the options may look like. And by then, hopefully the parents will have responded to the survey, which will be available to them next week, so that we can have that input so Dr. Cartwright and her team can finalize those plans. And we appreciate input of everyone in helping that process along. Any other announcements? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second by Evans.
Please call the roll.
Harlan,
Aye.
Evans,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
Herzog,
Aye.
Olmsted,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Motion carries to adjourn.
Thank you very much. With that, this meeting is adjourned.